Hi, I'm Debbie with Easy Piecing. As promised in our past couple of blogs, we are working today with our scraps since we're sheltering in place, not going out shopping, and I think most quilt stores are closed, not deemed a necessity, although we might think it is. I pulled my blue scraps, and we're going to play around and make a crazy quilt block today. We have some various projects lined up for this month, but today I want to start with the basic block. This is our Crazy Patch #1 block, and I'll show you a couple little things you can do so that you don't get a patterned effect with your quilt if you're using just our two crazy quilt blocks. Want to kind of mix it up a little bit so you don't get any sort of a pattern to it. So what we're going to do is start with our fabric piece #1. I cut a couple of pieces out, the first few, and then after that we're going to wing it. So you want to set your fabric piece #1 with the wrong side facing up and set your foundation on top. You want to have about 1/4 of an inch of the fabric underneath going past the line between space 1 and space 2, and make sure that you have enough, at least 1/4 of an inch all the way around all the sides of space #1. And if you want to fussy cut for the center of your block, this is a great time to do it. You can see through there, so you can set it exactly where you want. And if you are fussy cutting a little print and you have more than 1/4 of an inch into space #2 or an odd angle, just you can trim it to the 1/4 of an inch like we will be trimming for the rest of the pieces, and you'll be good to go. I stick a pin in it to hold it in place, and then I turn it over so the right side of the fabric is facing up. And if you look at the numbers on the foundation right now, they're all backwards. That's the way it should be. When you're working on the foundation side, you want to be able to read the printing. And then we're going to take fabric piece #2 and we're going to set it even with that edge of piece #1 where it went 1/4 of an inch past the line. You want right sides together, and then we will put a pin back away from where we're going to stitch just to hold it in place. It makes it a little easier for maneuvering it to the machine. And then we'll take it to our machine, and you want to put the needle down right at the start of the line, and you want to use a regular stitch length, 10 to 12 stitches per inch. I think on a digital machine it's 2.4 to 2.6. You just going to use regular stitch because you're going to leave this foundation in, and just stitch along the line. And you want to stop at the other end of the line and clip our threads. I like to clip my threads as I go. I don't want to get any of them caught in underneath or between the layers of fabric. And then we'll remove our pin, take it to the pressing mat, and I like to set the stitches, and I use a medium steam setting on my foundation work, and open up piece #2 and press it nice and flat. So that's what we have so far. We'll put it on the cutting mat, and we're going to get ready to add piece #3. And you want to take a straight edge and line it up on the line between 1 and 2 and #3. 1, 2 is 1 unit now. And put it on the line, and then fold just your foundation back. And this is where you want to use your add 1/4 ruler. It's got a 1/4 inch lip on it. You can use a regular ruler, but the add 1/4 is just so much easier. It doesn't slip on you, and you get a nice perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. So there's the 1/4 inch seam allowance into space #3. So we're ready to add piece #3. I happen to have it cut already, And we will put right sides together, that edge even. And I like to put a couple of pins to hold it. It just makes it much nicer to get it to the sewing machine. Put the threads back. And you can see through your foundation if the fabric had curled under, you could see it. So this gives you, because you can see it, it should be nice and flat and just right. And stitch from one end of the line to the other. You don't need to back stitch, because if you go too far, and I'm going to purposely go beyond the line to show you why you don't want to stitch past the line. And you have seams, crossing seams, so your stitching won't come loose. You don't need to worry about that. And we'll take our pins out and take it to the pressing mat and set those stitches. Open that up and press it nice and flat. Down here, this isn't where we're going next, but where I went past the line. When you put your straight edge on the line and fold your foundation back, and you've stitched too far, it'll make a pucker in your foundation. If you don't back stitch, it's real easy to just kind of pull on that and flatten it out so it doesn't tear your foundation or give you mess up your 1/4 inch seam allowance. So we've got 1, 2, 3. Number 4 is next. So I'm going to turn this around, and we're going to put the straight edge even with the line going to space number 4. Use our add 1/4, and we're going to trim this. And now I'm going to show you a little trick just to keep your from getting, all of your Crazy Patch number 1 blocks would look exactly the same. Your fabrics would be different, but the shapes would all be the same. So I'm going to take a couple of pieces of fabric and stitch them together to give us our piece for the next space. And it'll have an extra seam in it, or it'll be actually 2 pieces of fabric. And a great thing about these Crazy Patch blocks are, if you make a mistake, nobody is going to know, because they're crazy. Nothing has to match. And then I press this seam open. So there I've sewn 2 pieces together, and this piece is supposed to measure 3.5 by 5 inches if you look on the cutting chart that came with the block. So we're going to go 3.5 wide, and I'm just going to leave it a little longer. It gives me a little wiggle room here for which way I want to go. If I want to go that way, or if I want to go this way. I think I want to go this way. Go a little further past that line and put a pin. And another pin. And then we'll turn it over and stitch on the line. Take our pins out. that. And then we're going to take it to the pressing mat and set those stitches, open it up, and press it nice and flat. And now that's number 4. Number 5 is over here. So we'll just trim it like regular. But on the bigger sections or spaces, we'll throw that back into the scrap pile. You can sew 2 or 3 or 4, however many pieces, and you don't have to just sew, like straight. You can do a couple and do another one at an angle or whatever, just to switch it up a little bit. Let's see, number 5, according to the cutting chart, is 3.5 by 5.5. Back to the scrap pile. This one's a little longer than 5.5, but that's okay. Turn it over and stitch on the line.
No pins that time.
Pardon?
No pins that time.
No. It was out close to the edge. If you can hang on to it. I don't pin it, but when it's in the middle, it's a little more awkward. It's just whatever your preference is. This is what we've got so far, and I'm going to just continue covering this, and we'll get back to you when we get close to the end.
Okay. Action.
Okay, so I have my block fully covered except for the last piece. It's ready to go, so we are going to stitch on the line. Pins out and give it one last good pressing. And once I'm done, I like to turn it over and press it on the foundation side just to make sure that I have it laid out nice and flat. And then we're going to trim it on all 4 sides 1/4 of an inch from the solid line. Whoops. I would say these scraps on the outside edge, except for possibly this one large one, would not be worth saving. We'll keep that one. And here's my completed block. And I just wanted to point out a couple of things. On this particular space, I have 3 fabrics that I sewed together to make one piece for piece number 9. And on the bottom one, I just sewed some strips that I had pre-cut. I cut them about 2 inches long, thereabouts, and I sewed them together. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what you can do. This one is 2 strips in one space. We sewed these 2 together and then put them on. Same with this one. So I have another one here that I made earlier. Same block, but there you don't get any kind of a repeat or a pattern to it. Even though they're the same, they're different. And that is
Crazy.
that is the fun of doing a crazy quilt. So that's today's little tidbit, and in another day or two we're going to show you a couple of different projects. This will get you through if you're just making a quilt and you just want the blocks, as like the one behind me. This will get you going, and the block number 2 is done exactly the same way. It's just the shapes are a little different. So I hope this gets you started, or gets you anxious to get started, get you going through your scraps and see what you can do while you're sheltering at home. See what you can do to make a beautiful quilt from your scraps that costs you nothing. So take it easy for now and get happy sewing.
Okay.
Okay, look at those, don't look anything alike, do they? Same block.